So I was asked to do a video on the subject of the dynamics in the earlier years of my life that led me to be prone to toxic relationships. Um, it's fascinating because I feel that it's necessary to make something very clear in the beginning of this video and accept responsibility and accountability for the dynamics that I've experienced in my life in some of the toxic relationships that I've found myself in. It's wild because if there's something that I've learned, it's that I have actually enabled a lot of this stuff, and it's it's kind of hard to like open up about that and admit that. Um, but if not the biggest element of this entire thing, most definitely one of the biggest elements, and it's exactly what I'm going to dive fucking headfirst into, is boundaries. That specifically of non existent boundaries and permeable boundaries. Um, with any relationship, if healthy boundaries are not in place, I personally believe that there's going to be turbulence. I personally believe that there are going to be issues. I believe that there's not going to be balance. I believe that there are going to be challenges. I believe that things are going to keep being all over the fucking place. Um, Probably the biggest element of toxicity in all of the relationships that I've been in. Um, Not just romantic, actually. I've had relationships in the past that I've had to cut off. No names. I don't do that. Um, Boundaries. But I've had relationships in the past that have been toxic. They've been fucked up. They've been just genuinely, like you do a double take when looking at them. You're like, what the fuck? you know? Um, Boundaries, both a lack thereof and permeable boundaries, I would argue, are one of the biggest reasons why a relationship is toxic, right? And there's a lot here. There's a lot to explore. It goes really deep. It really does. Like when you boundaries are so serious that when you start setting them, if you set them with people that one don't like them and two don't have them, you're going to find yourself out of that person or those people's lives real fucking quick. Yeah. Boundaries are one of the biggest reasons why healthy relationships are healthy. A lack of boundaries or permeable boundaries are the very reason why. I mean, it's not everything. It's not a matter of all or nothing here. But it's at least one of the biggest reasons why um, turbulence occurs in relationships. Um, let's talk about the dynamics of what unhealthy relationships with either permeable or non existent boundaries look like, right? Let's look at dynamics like codependency, for instance, right? How you see me is how I see me. How you feel about me is how I feel about me, right? There's not a boundary of my shit is my shit. I am whole and complete. My worth is intrinsic and it is not based on you or that person or that thing or that job or this, that, and the other. It is entirely intrinsic. And so, therefore, it's not based on anything. Codependency is fucking wild because it's the exact opposite of that. Codependency is my worth is entirely based around how you see and feel me, how you think about me, how you perceive me, how you feel about me. And quite honestly, I'll do fucking anything, right? Either a lack of boundaries or permeable boundaries, right? Maybe you set a boundary and you're like, fine, right? And when I say fine, I mean like, all right, just step all over my boundary, you know? It's the way that I've always been treated, and that's all that's familiar and comfortable to me. So, that's the way that it is. A relationship that is toxic, that lacks healthy boundaries, that has permeable boundaries or non existent boundaries, um, that is where likely both parties don't have a developed sense of self, right? There's some serious um, disfiguring in the ego, right? Maybe because of that, they don't really have a clear understanding of their likes, dislikes, wants, needs. And it's not just that, it's because also they have tied their worth extrinsically. I believe I said that right. Another way of saying that is externally, right? So basically, my worth, we'll just say that the worth is right here, right? My worth is tied to you. My worth is tied to you. My worth is tied to you. Validate me. Validate me. Validate me. Approve of me. Approve of me. I need your validation. I need your validation. I need your validation. Rather than saying, here's what I'm comfortable. Here's what I'm comfortable with. This is the boundary that I'm setting. This is what I'll do. This is what I won't do. Right? Having limits, having a clear understanding for where it is you begin and you end. So the reason why I'm diving so much into boundaries here is because one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, why I have attracted so many toxic relationships in my life is because I learned either non existent boundaries or permeable boundaries. I'm not going to get into the fabric of why. I'm getting really good at boundaries. Here I am talking about toxic relationships, why they occur, why they exist, boundarylessness or permeable boundaries, talking about how I learned both of those and how I am working to set and maintain healthy boundaries. Um, it's important for me to explore this stuff for myself and to storytell and to showcase so that people can really understand. Um, but it's also important that I maintain boundaries within my own life for the sake of myself, for the sake of my own sense of respect, and, um, just to kind of like keep a keep a clear understanding of what it is that I am comfortable with, what it is that I want to share, what it is that I don't want to share. Um, Again, I was asked to talk about what it is that led me to attract toxic relationships. You have to learn something at a very early point in your life to set out and attract toxic relationships. You also have to learn something at a very early point in your life to set you up to attract healthy relationships. Usually, what it is that teaches you to attract unhealthy relationships is either boundarylessness or permeable boundaries, right? Because both of those basically have you stepping way too fucking far out of yourself, doing way too fucking much for other people, taking on way too much fucking responsibility in other people's lives that you don't have to. And not only that, let me get into the whole fabric of doing so fucking much for other people. I've been here so many times. Doing so fucking much for other people that it's never good enough, and that it usually ends to, it usually leads to the ending or the fallout of any relationship. Um, there are people out there that literally don't have boundaries. Um, and with that, they don't have a developed sense of self. It is deeply and wildly underdeveloped. Um, and these people are usually the people that cannot maintain not just healthy, like they're never in a healthy relationship. A healthy individual would not be attracted to having a relationship with them, but the relationships that they do hold are short-lived because they're incapable of holding a long-term relationship. That's just the way that it is. um, so again, to really, you know, say it again, I might make a part two to this. I really enjoy diving into material like this, and I also enjoy making part twos to videos like this. um, what led me to attract toxic relationships is pretty much both boundarylessness and permeable boundaries. And I really cannot just communicate enough to help people to understand. Um, Actually, I'll end off with this before I end off. Um, Let me just say first and foremost, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries to infinity and beyond. That's first and foremost. Secondly, I've talked about this in other videos as well, and I'll just go into it again. Individuation and differentiation, right? I made this in, I think, another video. Um, People that haven't individuated and differentiated, they also are the same people probably that lack healthy boundaries and have either developed boundarylessness or permeable boundaries. Um, they're still living in survival. They're still cultivating relationships based on um, pleasing mom and dad, right? So basically, they're pleasing mom and dad through their friendships, their romantic relationships, all this, that, and the other, right? And so that's another important part about the whole thing of boundaries is that, you know, like once you awaken to the realization that you are still trying to please mommy and daddy, but through your, you know, friendships, through your romantic relationships and everything, you know, it's kind of like, oh, wait a second. That makes sense because I don't actually want to do any of this stuff that I'm doing. And I have come to that realization. Like, I have gotten out of toxic relationships being like, oh, wow, I was doing all these things that I didn't actually want to do. And I was just doing them because I wanted the validation and the approval. And why is that the case? Oh, because complete and healthy individuation and differentiation have not taken place. Individuation and differentiation are what lead to healthy boundaries. Without that stuff, without knowing the difference between self and other, differentiation, individuation, separating yourself away from the people that you were raised with earlier on in life, developing your own sense of self and identity that is complete, that is whole, that is healthy, that has actual clarity of who the fuck you are, right? Knowing yourself, knowing what it is you like, dislike, want, need, all that stuff. Setting boundaries is actually setting healthy boundaries. Let's talk about healthy boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries is actually really challenging when those things haven't taken place. It really is. And, you know, again, boundaries. The biggest culprit here, I believe, is boundaries. Um, if you, I believe this. I don't know how true this is, and I'm not claiming fact or truth when I say this, but I would bet that if you look at every unhealthy and toxic relationship in the world, you would probably see a common theme of either boundarylessness, meaning that there are no boundaries, or that the boundaries are permeable. There will probably be a part two to this.